Salut tout le monde, hi everyone. Today we are diving into French nasal sounds. They are a key part of a language and one of the main reasons why the French accent sounds so distinctive. Let's start. In French we have three nasal sounds. They are represented by these symbols: en, un, on. As for the pronunciation, this is how it works. They all pronounce through the nose, but the mouth shape changes. For the en, you're going to have to open your mouth. En. For the un, you're going to have to stretch your lips slightly. Un. And for the on, you're going to round your lips almost as if you were saying the letter O. On. Okay, can you hear the difference? En, un, on. We produce these sounds by combining certain letters together. And it is really important to know that a nasal sound can never be followed by a vowel. It will be either at the end of the words or it will be followed by a consonant. Okay, so pay attention to that because this is something you're going to see all the way throughout this video. Let's start with the sound en. We're going to take a look at all the different combinations that produce this sound in French. For example, when the letters A, M are followed either by a B or a P, that makes the sound en. Like in these words, for example, ambulance, ambulance, lampe, lampe. So, you see in these two words, you never hear the letter A or M. What you hear is the combination of the two, okay? We create a new sound. And this is really important. It's going to be the same thing with every single combination we're going to study today. Okay? So I hope you get the general principle, and let's move on to the next combination. AN placed at the end of the word or followed by a consonant. For example, plan, plan. Français, français. So here, again, you see what you hear is the combination of these two letters. You hear en. You don't hear A, you don't hear N. You only hear the new sound we created. All right? However, be careful, there's one exception to this rule. When AN is followed by another N, in that case, this sound is no longer nasal. For example, in this word, anniversaire, anniversaire. You see, A-double-N, it's simply an. We don't pronounce it en. Right, moving on to the next combination. EM followed by a B or a P. Like in these words, for example. Tempête, tempête. Trembler, trembler. You see, it works exactly like AM plus B or P that we saw earlier. Exactly the same thing. Right, let's move on to the next combination, and this is a big one. This is the letter EN followed by a consonant. For example, in the word dentiste, dentiste, or in trente, trente. You hear, again, that's only the sound en, okay? We cannot hear the N, for example. You shouldn't say dentiste, trente. No, dentiste, trente, all right? Only that nasal sound. But where's the fun without a little exception? If you found the combination E-N-N inside of the word, and I insist inside, it cannot be at the beginning of the word, in that case, that combination will be pronounced N, okay? Like in Italienne, Italienne. That's the only exception. For any other consonant that follows EN, in that case, that will simply be en. And that's it, guys. This is all the possible combinations to make the sound en. Right, now let's take a look at the second nasal sound, un. Un. A little tip about the pronunciation. It's the same pronunciation as the number one in French, un. You can get this sound, for example, by combining the letters A, I, N, like in these words, pain, pain, craindre, craindre. You see? But always keep in mind that if we add a vowel to it, it's no longer nasal. That's why, for example, in French, to say American in the masculine form, we say américain. However, for the female form, we're going to say américaine. You see that letter E that we added at the end of the word? It broke the nasal sound, okay? Américain, américaine. Can you hear it? Right, the next combination to make the sound A is when the letters E, I, N are placed either before a consonant or at the end of the word, like in these two words. Peinture, peinture. Plein, plein. Another common combination to make the sound A is when you have the letters E and N placed at the end of the word. Very often you will find the letter I before, like in italien, italien. But sometimes you will find it without the letter I, like in this word, moyen, moyen. Next combination is the letters IM followed either by a B or a P. Let's take a look at these words. Timbre, timbre. Important, important. You see, in the last word, for example, important, you never hear the letter M, okay? You do not say important, you say important, all right? And that's exactly the same thing for the next combination. IN placed at the end of the word or before a consonant. For example, matin, matin. Information, information. You see, we do not say information, we say information. We create a new sound, okay? Forget about the I and the N, they no longer exist. It's only the sound in, information. But watch out, there's one exception. When IN is followed by another N, it's no longer nasal, like in this word, for example, innocent, innocent. All right, so for any consonant that follows IN, it will be nasal except for the letter N. And of course, always keep in mind that if there's a vowel, it breaks the nasal sound. For example, cousin, cousine. All right? Let's take a look at the next combination. UN followed by a consonant or at the end of the word. For example, lundi, lundi. Chacun, chacun. Okay? And finally, we have a less common combination that makes the sound A is the letters YM followed either by a B or a P. For example, symbole, symbole. Sympa, sympa. All right, time to look at the last nasal sound, the sound on. You can get that cute sound on, well, maybe not so cute, by combining the letters OM with a B or a P. For example, in these words, tomber, tomber, pompe, pompe. And I know it's tempting, but do not pronounce the letter M, okay? But the most common spelling to make the sound on is when you combine the letters ON and you place them either at the end of the word or before a consonant. For example, in these words, bonjour, bonjour, bonbon, bon, bon. So you do not say bonjour, you do not say bonbon, all right? And of course, there's one exception. When ON is followed by another N, in that case, it's no longer nasal. That's why, for example, in French, to say good, in the masculine form, we say bon, but in the feminine form, we say bonne. And that's it, guys. This is all you need to know about French nasal sounds. There are 3 of them, en, un, on. And remember the golden rules. They are always placed either before a consonant or at the end of the word, and they are pronounced as one single sound. This is all you need to remember. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe, to give it a like, but either way, you will see this face again next week with a new video. Merci beaucoup, à bientôt, au revoir.